Previously on DisasterClass.
I have dealt with a lot of people who would call themselves preppers, and you get some people who are across the spectrum on intensity, but generally they just want to provide for their needs. And almost everybody I've ever talked to about preparedness actually just wants to help people too.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Perez.
And I'm Wesley Long.
And we're bringing you a fresh new take on disaster preparedness.
Welcome to DisasterClass. Yep.
And it's not the lone wolf type of thing. Some people will talk like that, but you know, I don't know how to put this. When people talk big talk, essentially like, oh yeah, I'm just going to head out to the hills and I'm going to live off the land. It's like when I tell people I was in the military and they're like, oh, I would have joined the military, but I would have punched a drill sergeant in the face the second he yelled at me. It's like, no, you wouldn't have. Like, have you punched a lot of people in the face? Like, is that your typical response to things? Like suddenly there's a drill sergeant in your face and you're macho.
Option A,
it's
punch
like,
in face. Really?
Right. Like you probably have never punched anyone in your face when you're talking to these people, and maybe they have, but if they have, then they probably also know that that's not their typical response to somebody yelling. Mm-hmm. And you don't punch a drill sergeant in the face. That probably happens like, you know, 1 in 10,000 or 100,000 or 1,000,000, you know, like, right. Who knows? I've never even heard of somebody actually doing that. But yeah, that aside, it's people who basically just don't know yet.
Right.
And I like the word yet because even when you look at somebody and we're like, that guy's dumb or that guy's crazy or whatever it is, it's not really that they are crazy or dumb or unintelligent or what, like we're not passing final judgment on them. It's just they just don't know any better yet.
Yeah, they haven't experienced
it. Right, and most of the time it's young people who, like, they get into preparedness. It is fun, it's exciting. They think about these terrible situations. They get a really good bug out bag, a gun, and they think they're going to head for the hills. And then that's when the principles of emergency management come in. You have a plan, you have to test it. You got to do training, you have to do drills and exercise, and pretty quickly you start to find the holes in your plan. Like, if you want to know if your emergency kit is good, go camping for 3 days with no other resources, and you'll identify pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
oops, I needed that.
Yeah, I need that. So I need that. Right. And the same thing with these big old bug out bags people have. I like some prepper literature, post-apocalyptic fiction, or whatever it is. There's a lot of different varieties, but some of them basically say, like, oh yeah, I'm going to put on this 70-pound bag and I'm going to walk for days. It's like, that's pretty heavy, and if you're not in pretty good shape, you're not going to be walking for days. So I've like strapped on a bag and just put weights in it,
right,
and walked for an hour just to see, like, okay, if I have 50 pounds and I walk for an hour, how much is this a good backpack? Is it a lot of weight for me to carry? Mm-hmm. And you learn a lot of lessons on trying to minimize the weight of your kit. But even all that said, like, bugging out is typically not even an option you're going to do anyway. Like, why would you leave your home unless you absolutely have to? And exactly. that goes into evacuation planning. You should have a threshold. You should know ahead of time that you have that as an option, where it's not like I'm bugging out.
Right.
You got to kind of know what the triggers for that will be. And sometimes it's because your house is on fire. So do you have a kit that's near your door that you can get on the way out? Sometimes it's because a wildfire is on the way, or there was an earthquake and now your house is unstable. Mm-hmm. Maybe it is a post-apocalyptic doomsday scenario and you've got to leave. But even in that situation, where are you going? If you think you're going to live off the land, yep. I only know a little bit about foraging, and I know some people who are really, really good at foraging for wild edibles. And even they're just like, it's just, you're going to be really hungry. Even if you're really good at it, you're going to be really hungry.
Right.
So you and 300 million other people are going to head for the hills and try to eat the same blackberries. It's not going to be very effective.
It's not going to go well.
Yeah, that kind of boils down to a subject that we've been really talking about a lot lately, and as far as like communities coming together, like we talk about preparedness, like
has to go beyond
operating
personal.
as a silo is like you're only going to get so far, as you talked about.
Yep.
But when now you add your community into it and you can bring those forces together, how much more valuable is it? So kind of leading up to a future episode.
Yeah.
I don't know how much we want to talk about it.
I'll talk about it a little bit
talk
right
about
now. So I have this individual that I work with, and I was really impressed by their neighborhood approach. They have a neighborhood where, like, I haven't seen it, but in my head I'm visioning it's this cul-de-sac,
little
and there's
suburban area,
7 or 8 homes, and they get together. It started as a neighborhood watch where they were just all looking out for each other's property and all of the things that they had, right? Just, hey, there was interesting subject, and it's happening now a lot with the Ring, right? The Ring community, people are seeing things, and they're letting everybody know.
Not the horror movie, The Ring, but the
correct, the Ring,
doorbell.
the
doorbell
right,
camera.
camera security system,
alarm system,
yeah. So, which is pretty cool. It's like, oh, I saw a black bear on my Ring last week. Hey, make sure your garbage is sealed up. That's good information to share with your neighbors where you're sharing a space with them. So it kind of started as a neighborhood watch, and then they just started asking questions because as that group got more close knit and together, they're like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we just like figured some things out and like either shared resources, and maybe the main resource we can share is knowledge. Like, so they get together and they'll do a canning session where they're like, hey, one of the people on our team, in our group, knows how to can. Why don't we just learn that? We'll come together, we'll sit by the fire, we'll talk. It just builds neighborhood interconnectivity, and they learn a skill. And then they've just been going through different things, starting fire. Or one person would say, hey, look, generators are on sale this week at Home Depot. I'm going to grab one. Do you guys want to grab one? Oh, I don't know how to use a generator. Well, why don't you go pick one up? We'll figure out how to attach it to your home safely together. Because it came up, and I talked to you about this, Nate, at I think we talked about it a little bit at Die Pop, and I do want to get into that to talk about Die Pop and how great of an opportunity that was and is upcoming. I'll do a little ad for that. But here was a question that someone asked us. It's a question of morality. When prepping for yourself, how much do you share with your neighbors? How much are you obligated to share with your neighbors if they come knocking on your door and they're like, hey, I'm out of food, but I know you're a prepper and you have food? That's a legitimate concern because, you've got both sides of the equation. It's like, well, my family, we took the time in advance and the energy in advance, and I have mouths in my household that I have to feed with the food that we have been preparing with. You have nothing because you chose not to listen to any of the warnings, and now you want my food. And there's no right answer for this because, there's no way you can say, oh, turn them away because how do you feed your family? Or no, share with them because then what if everybody comes to you now, everyone's out?
Yeah, are you going to share with one person or 100 people or 1,000 people?
Right. Where do you cut that off? So I love this neighborhood approach because their approach is, hey, if we're all prepared, we can help each other, and we are a stronger unit, and we can help others.
Right. I don't know if you've read the book, The Unthinkable by Amanda Ripley.
But I've heard about it.
You should read it before you do that episode. But it's pretty good. It talks about a lot of different disaster scenarios, and one of the key points that she studied was that identified in her studies was that if you work together, you're more likely to survive.
Yeah.
And even if you don't know the people ahead of time,
right.
But if you do this neighborhood model, then you do know people ahead of time. You know each other's temperaments. Yeah. You know what resources you have, and you've got to build a relationship that's already a foundation.
Yeah.
But working together is just overall a better thing. And most people in preparedness really are community minded.
Agreed.
They just want to be
as prepared
more
as possible.
self-reliant and more prepared as possible. Basically, it's not that they don't like other people. They just want to separate themselves from the system a little bit.
Right. They're minimizing their vulnerabilities. To a point, though, because this is something I've prompted you to have this little conversation before, and I found it extremely interesting. Where your logo came from as a preparedness guy, because we sit here and we've all said it's great to share, it's great to share, it's great to share. However, there's another side to that too. So I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'm going to let you tell the story of it because I've loved it ever since I heard it.
So my logo, can you superimpose it right here?
Try to superimpose it there.
Here.
We'll insert there.
You have to send me the file.
It's basically an oil lamp, like an ancient oil lamp with a flame and then a big drop of oil. And it is a reference to the parable told in the New Testament about the 10 virgins or 10 handmaidens. And what they're doing is preparing. They're getting ready for a positive event. They're not getting ready for some terrible cataclysmic event. They're going to a wedding. And this is why I really like this, because it's a positive outlook. They say, hey, there's a wedding to go to. When the groom comes, we'll all go and they're going to be bridesmaids, essentially. Part of the tradition is we'll get in line and we'll light our lamps. So 5 of them said, you know what, I'm going to make sure I have enough oil so that I can participate in this awesome experience, that my life will be good no matter what happens, and probably didn't even think anything of it. The other 5 of them just didn't bring any extra oil, just the oil that was in the lamp. But the problem is that there was a disruption, that the groom didn't come until later than expected. He came at midnight, and somebody came running ahead, said, hey, he's on his way. They all wake up and they light their lamps, and 5 of them said, hey, I am out of oil. Will you share some? And then they're like, well, at this point, if I share my oil with you, neither of us is going to have enough. And which is pretty reasonable. Like, you could have all the best intentions and say, sure, let's share this, but then you're both out of luck. Mm-hmm. And so I look at that, and the oil isn't necessarily in the spiritual aspect of it. It's not tangible things. It's not actual oil. Mm-hmm. It's everything that you've done spiritually to make yourself ready, and you can't share that. You can't give somebody what you've learned through reading your scripture. You can try to like bear witness or testimony to people spiritually and share that, but you can't give them the months or years of dedication and change that you've had in your heart. But in preparedness, the oil doesn't represent the tangible things necessarily, because you can give somebody some food up to a point. We talked about that, right? And you can share tangible items, but mostly it's the mindset that you have, mm-hmm. because you spent time ahead of time.
Yeah.
The oil is just, it's the gear, the oil in the gears and in the works of the clock, right? That keeps things running smoothly. You've identified your needs and you've done something about it. You've changed the way that you look at your own life. You've changed your mindset and you've taken responsibility for yourself. You can't give away responsibility for yourself to somebody else and have that be their responsibility for themselves. Yep. But the other aspect of this lamp is the flame on the end, because if somebody else has changed their mindset, has taken actions, even if they don't have a lot of tangible items, but they have taken ownership of their own life and responsibility for themselves, that flame can touch their lamp and light the oil that they have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I just thought it was there was a lot involved in what you guys will see, a very simple visual logo, and it just spoke to me, because resources are finite. And mm-hmm. for those that plan ahead, you're going to be in a little bit better position. But we have had someone ask us that question, that moral question: at what point in time do you tell someone, no, I can no longer share with you? Because then what might happen? Do they try to take by force? Does it escalate? Right? There's a lot of variables in there. Mm-hmm. So again, getting into this mindset as early as possible, preparing for yourself and your family. And I always preach this: prepare to share. Mm-hmm. Prepare for that. Like, I know I'm that type of person where people are going to come to me and ask for help. I know it. That's been my entire life. If I don't prepare for that, I'm foolish.
Right.
It's going to happen.
And we go back to some of those situations that got me interested in preparedness in the first place. Mm-hmm. It wasn't oh no, I'm in danger. It's someone else is in danger, and I can do nothing about it because I don't know what to do.
Correct.
So a lot of people in preparedness have felt the same way. They see somebody else's vulnerability, or they're helpless to, they can't help somebody else, and they're like, hey, I'm gonna change that.
Yep.
And for a lot of people, it's, they get married, they have kids,
Yeah.
these life-changing events where they recognize that they have responsibilities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just the earlier you start, the better off you are.
Yeah. And I love how like you highlight the positive
Correct
aspect of it, because preparedness and prepping, it's gotten kind of this negative connotation, but when everybody prepares. Everybody preps. Like, if you don't prepare to go to work, you're not going to make money. You're going to lose your job, and you can't. Like, we prepare every day, but we're preparing for. So why are we not going to prepare for something positively negative? It's all it's consequence management, right?
Every time you go to the gas station, you're preparing because you need gas in your car. That's you've identified a need, and you do that. You don't wait until you're out of gas on the side of the road and you're like, oh, I can just call AAA.
Right.
That's what they're there for. So people are just like, oh, I can just call 911.
Or I'll call FEMA. FEMA will bring me food.
Yeah, I'll call FEMA. Yeah, FEMA will take care of me. So people do this all the time for things that they see as consequential to themselves. They don't want to be stranded on the side of the road. But then they start to justify in their mind, like, well, is an emergency really likely? It's like, maybe not. I mean, you should look at that. You should decide what are the risks in my area. What
hazard
are the
identification,
hazards?
risk assessment.
Right. And then how do they impact my needs, and what needs do I need to buffer? And if they do that, then it's just meeting your needs. Like I have milk in my refrigerator, and I have some milk in my freezer too. But you have to rotate it through that because it gets a weird consistency if you don't rotate it through somewhat frequently. I've also got some boxed milk, some ultra high temperature pasteurized milk on my shelf downstairs. But I also have some powdered milk, and that powdered milk isn't going to go bad for a long time. Right. But I can still rotate through it when I'm ready to. So it's identifying, hey, I use milk pretty frequently, and now I have a backup. If the freezer's out and I can't use that, guess what? I've got some on the shelf. If that's not working, well, I can just add water to this stuff over here. Yep. So you determine based on your own needs how much of that you need. You're not going to store 20 gallons of milk in your refrigerator because that's going to go to waste. Right. And it goes in the question too about, like, is it hoarding? And a lot of people have kind of questioned that. They say, well, we're out of toilet paper because the preppers are hoarding toilet paper. Back in 2020, it's like, well, they already had toilet paper.
Yeah, so, it wasn't the preppers.
It's like your logic is really, really off here, and that's typically the situation. It's people who respond poorly, and we're talking about preparedness and in emergency management. You look at preparedness, response, recovery. Preparedness is the stuff you do before you need it. Correct. Once you need it, you're in response mode. If you're responding poorly, if you're responding by taking everything, then that's hoarding. Correct. But if you're preparing and the resources are there, and you're using your time, money, effort to put stuff away,
a little bit at a time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the people who are bulk buying the toilet paper were not. Those were not the prepared people.
Yeah, the preppers already have that. They want to live off grid. Like they don't want to be. Have to be reliable on these systems, right? They're not the ones. Yeah. No, it's a lot of great points, Nat. I appreciate that.
Hey, everyone. Just want to pause real quick to thank Sawyer Products for sponsoring this episode of DisasterClass. Sawyer Products offer the best, most technologically advanced solutions for protection against sun, bugs, water, and injuries. Everything from water filtration systems to insect repellents. I personally have been using their water filters for years. So if you're at work, at home, or at play, make sure you check out Sawyer Products at Sawyer.com.
Should we shift gears now?
Sure.
I want to talk dye pop. This is going to be very, and for our general public, dynamic populations. This was a very specific training course, an event put on by the Readiness Lab, which we're all a part of here, in Atlanta. It was the first inaugural training class. Jason and I were students in it, received the certification after the training was successful for us.
People might remember our road trip episode.
Yes, our road trip. We were driving down.
We recorded podcast in the car.
Yeah. Nat was one of the trainers and teachers at that dynamic populations course. So, Nat, I just want to talk about that as a plug on the Readiness Lab. What were your thoughts on it? How did you feel with participating in it? What do you think the value of it is for emergency managers? And what was your experience like?
When I was a combat medic, I trained combat lifesavers, and that's every soldier you train as a combat lifesaver, everyone you can, and you teach them the medical skills, and then you need to practice it. And the better you practice with them, the better they get at it. Right? And there's an important thing to do while you're training people and things like that, because we weren't looking at any deployment coming up. We're looking at not using these skills for any military application at all. And once I got them to realize, hey, these are skills you can use if you pass a car accident on your way home today. Like, oh, holy smokes, this could be relevant. Like your buddy could get shot while you're out hunting, and you can patch him up with these same tools, which you can get anywhere. It's not like we have super secret military tools for treating trauma. It's you can get the knowledge, you can get the resources, and build the skills to handle it. So we would do some pretty cool scenarios sometimes, if we had the time and resources. And some of these scenarios we would go through where the people were injured, and it was very involved. We had done the training portion of it. We talked them through it, walked them through it, and then we do a real exercise. Hands-on. And in emergency management, we do that for people all the time, which is very seldom do emergency managers get that kind of training. Like, we provide quality training to a lot of people, and we want people to have high fidelity training, as real to life as possible, that actually meets their objectives. But as emergency managers, we're kind of like, we get the death by PowerPoint often, and we get to do some good training, but we're really missing out on that hands-on practical application.
Next level.
There's the next level. And not to say all the training is bad. It sounds like I'm knocking it, but the dynamic populations course is unique. It is very involved, very integrated and hands-on. Like, we were actually in the stadium as we're talking about evacuating the stadium. You wonder, okay, I want to put this resource here on a map, and you walk them over to the window, and it's like, oh, right there. And you can see if that actually works, right? Because you're there, and you can walk around a little bit and see all of this. And being able to do it, it is a different type of exercise, because it doesn't fit into any box, really. Which I thought was great, because you're doing things, but you're also talking through it, and it's like a real operation. We're put into a scenario where we have to problem solve. We have to figure out what resources are, and we get real problems that we're facing.
Yep, and then you figure it out.
It was, you have to figure it out. Suddenly you don't have the resources that you're depending on. You can't just talk it away. Well, we would just call the National Guard because they're not available, or they can't make it here. Or that's the trope in the movies. Like, the Army will be here in an hour. In what world is the Army going to be anywhere in an hour?
Right, that's not how it works.
No. Like, they'll have 24 hours to mobilize, and then they'll get there, and then they'll stage, whatever it is. Right. So it's not so simple.
And also, too, just to jump in here, also, too, the real-time training aspect and experiential training aspect. If you were to make a phone call, a lot of times, like with our EMS background, when we're going to, like, through National Registry or something, we're going through our medical or a trauma, and we get to voice treat. It's like, okay, BSI, scene safety. Okay, is there an injury here? Yes, no. Okay, I would wrap it. You can voice treat it and just move on. Here, it's like, oh, you were going to call somebody? Pick up the phone and call them, and actually figure out what words you're going to use to ask to activate that resource.
Yeah.
What does that feel like? Not to give away too much, because it's a really, really dynamic training. The first 2 days with the discussion, and then backed up with the tabletop exercises that were individualized to the cohorts. And then for the final day, when I say you work a problem for 6 hours, we went through this process, rotating in groups in each of these 6 disciplines for a full hour each. Yep. Like, it is intense. And it wasn't intentional that the heat was there because we didn't have air conditioning. But I think that speaks to it. It's like, yeah, you're going to get hot and sweaty as an emergency manager trying to work this problem.
Yeah.
How do you formulate the words to have a press conference to alert the local area that they're up to 4,000 dead at this event? Right. What does that feel like when people ask you questions about that? We work that problem for 6 hours straight.
And one thing that's really great about it is that it all builds on itself. So you have to deal with the consequences of the decisions made by the team prior to you. You don't get it's not a blank slate. It's decisions you make impact the scenario.
Correct.
And other people have to deal with the consequences, good or bad. And it's great. It's great for real life experience, because when you're dealing with an incident and people make a poor decision or a delayed decision, usually it's not a poor decision. It's just a delayed decision, not on the right timeline, or they didn't work quickly enough to get the resource. Well, that's what you get.
There could be repercussions to that.
Right. Yeah. You've got to work with that. The teams all did amazing. Like it was so great. And, the people from different backgrounds coming together,
and different skill sets.
Right. And that's what I love about all of this, is because, you don't have to have a degree in emergency management necessarily.
Right.
We did obviously the emergency managers and emergency responders, but they didn't look at this like, oh, what does the book say? They said, you know what, I came up against an experience one time, and we did this. Somebody came up with a situation where they did a bus rotation instead of busing people from. Yeah, this is probably giving away a lot, but instead of busing people from the stadium to the evacuation center, they bus them to the train them up. That way, the buses could
go back and forth.
Tons more people.
Can increase the volume. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Instead of having your buses gone for an hour,
a long distance, and then a long return trip empty. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And I'm telling you, so
it was an amazing training.
It was amazing for me. And I don't have a degree in emergency management. I am more on the response side. So to see that high level 10,000 foot view of the responsibility of emergency managers, I was blown away. But also because of the skill of you and the other teachers through the discussion and the activity of the tabletops, I felt 100% prepared to be in that room and help make decisions and come to a good outcome. So for me, I was blown away with the value of the training and the competency that I learned just by going. So let me ask this question now. If you're an emergency manager that's listening to this, or a responder that's listening to this, and you've heard of dynamic populations and you have the opportunity to go, would you recommend it?
Yeah, absolutely. It like you just said, basically, it's an empowering experience. Yeah, and that's what we need. We're not, we don't know everything. We know a lot, but we don't know everything. We need to be able to stretch ourselves to be able to reach new heights. Yep. We need to be able to, because we can sit through a PowerPoint or a computer-based learning or whatever it is, and flip through that. We can take the quiz, answer the same questions about NIMS and ICS all day, and click. Yep. We could go to a presentation, a training where it's still going to be PowerPoint. You get to have the feedback of the instructors who have some good experience, maybe do a couple tabletop things. But are you really stretching yourself? Like, all these trainings are good, but are they great? So this training really just puts you in your own shoes for a minute, which we don't get to do. Yep. Most of emergency management is sitting at a desk, not doing a whole lot. It's getting
writing
things ready,
writing a document.
Right. So most of that, and then when we do training, it's for other people typically, and then we can attend trainings which can benefit us, but are they really getting us the value for the time spent? If you're going to a week-long training, are you getting the value out of that? And this isn't a whole week, it was 3 days of training.
Power-packed days.
And are you getting the value of that time away from your organization or your jurisdiction, and absolutely with dynamic populations for emergency management?
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, no doubt. I agree 100%. So we got one coming up. The next training is
Orlando,
in Orlando,
29th, I think.
Yeah, November 29th to December 2nd. We'll post some links to that on the Readiness Lab website, because wow. And again, if anyone is interested in it, reach out to Jason and myself. We will find a way to help get your team there. We got a little leeway with some discounts. We can do some things.
Yeah.
We can get you in there.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
Oh, one other aspect of it is that it is kind of an all aspects of, like, even our off time, we're still talking about it. We had events, social events, and we went to a baseball game in a stadium. We got to see their evacuation plan, their evacuation indicators. We're looking at this like, okay, if
real life
something happened right now, what would we do? So it was fun. We had a great time.
Team building.
But it was also a team building. We also got to learn from it. And it was a really good balance of everything where we got to learn and play, and all of it was beneficial.
Yeah. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And maybe I'm just thinking, just to take, if for our listeners who are not in response or in emergency management, I mean, these are the type of things, like this was a training exercise. You want your officials, you want your responders, your emergency managers trained and know how to react during a situation. The value, maybe Nat, you could just speak to this with our just everyday people, that are listening to our podcast. Training and exercise, it's not difficult. They can do this also.
Yep. Yes. And they can do it in bite-sized pieces. Your training, your drills, like a drill is a specific response action. You don't have to do everything in a drill. You could just practice one specific response, but at your own home, you can build up to it. If you want your kids to know what the smoke alarm sounds like, at my house, I try to cook and the kids hear it.
Perfect.
Or you could just you could test your smoke detector. You should be doing that frequently anyway. All you got to do is hold the button, it'll beep, and you let it go, and it should stop beeping.
When you hear this, what do we do?
Right. And then you ask them, where would we go? How would we get there? And
do we take
we're going to get outside.
Right.
Yeah. And then you ask your kids, where would be a good place for us to meet outside? It's a safe place away from the house. And they're gonna be like, oh, grandma's house. And you're like, okay, what about here by our house? What's a good place where we're outside of the house, but safe? And they can usually come up with a good place. Like my kids, I asked them that, they said the mailbox. The mailbox is the best place for us to meet.
Perfect.
For evacuating. That's our home evacuation assembly area. Yep. And yeah, it's fun to do with kids. You can practice the bit by bit, and then you can build up to where you practice feeling the door to see if it's hot. You practice crawling on the floor, practice alternate exits from your home. What would it look like if we had to get out of the window? How are you going to take the screen out? Do you have a ladder or any of that? Like, so you just look at your own needs and decide, how are we going to do this? You just break it up into little bits, have a fun time, play a game with your kids, and build up. And it can be a lot of fun.
I knew a family that they got their bug out bags, and then they would just take them and go camping for the weekend. Yeah. And it's like this type of stuff can be fun. Yep. It's not difficult. It's easy but
it's so important, because if you have a plan and you've 100%. Never practiced your plan, what is the value of that plan? Right? You got to build a plan, and you got to practice the plan.
The people panic buying the toilet paper did not have a plan.
Correct.
Don't be those people.
Don't be that guy.
Yeah. We've talked before about how much water do you really need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you really want to know how much water you need, turn your water off for a day or 3 days.
You will find out.
You are disrupting a specific need, and which is a good way to run a drill or an exercise. You're disrupting a specific need. And suddenly you've got to figure out, what are you going to do with those toilets? How are you going to cook? How are you going to keep things clean? And you're like, I'm not going to wash dishes with bottled water. So do I have extra jugs? Do I have paper plates on hand? That way I can just throw everything away instead of dirtying things. Basically you figure out the need you want to test, and then do an intentional disruption of that need. And camping is a disruption of basically all of your needs. Yep. Just what you bring with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
This is awesome.
We appreciate you so much. We are going to collaborate more. We want to get on your podcast. We want to do some talking and having some fun with you over on Preparedness Works. We would love to have you back, maybe as like a substitute teacher sometime. If I'm out of commission or if Jason's out of commission, you know, we would love to collaborate more with you.
Yeah.
Man. So
I'm a really strict substitute teacher.
Oh, you're one of those. I love it.
They're not going to get away with a lot.
That's it. You're going to lay down the law.
Or we'll just watch a movie.
Yes. Yes. That is such a great idea for an episode. We are definitely
Class is in session.
Yes.
Roll tape.
Yes. And just watch this movie and we'll talk later.
Well, actually, we might have be talking about well, at least a film or TV series coming up.
Yes.
So that we want to talk about on the podcast. We'll kind of throw a plug into that for later. But anyway, Nat, thank you so much. Is there anything? First of all, like, where can people go if they want to stay in touch with you? Feel free to plug whatever you want right here.
Sure. I'm most active on Instagram at the Preparedness Guy. I also have the page for Preparedness Works on Instagram, and you can listen to that podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts. You can go to my website, preparednessguy.com, and sign up with your email, and you'll get a free family emergency plan, and it'll talk you through some of the most common likely hazards and how to basically use that as a way to do drills and exercises for your home.
Awesome. Love it.
Beautiful.
So we're so excited that you came on the show, Nat. We're looking forward to collaborating with you further.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And now homework. So, Wesley, as you know, there's always homework. There's always homework. So we want you to like, subscribe, fill out the alert button so that you are in the know whenever we post something here, because this content is for you guys. And we would love for you to leave us the 5-star rating, the thumbs up, all of that. And please also leave something you liked about the episodes. If it's Nat, if it's what he's doing over at Preparedness Works, if it's here, if it's us, it's the collaboration, please leave us something that we can interact with so we can keep the conversation going.
Yeah. And as always, if you have a question, you have a preparedness tip, a disaster story to share, send us an email at disasterclass@instinctready.com or send us a message on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. And doing so will always put you in the running to be featured on the show and win some cool stuff. Well, as always, thank you so much for tuning into Disaster Class. Stay educated.
Stay prepared.
Stay equipped. We'll see you next time. Disaster Class is part of the Readiness Lab, the home for podcasts, webinars, and training in the field of emergency and disaster services.